also reminds our team that Porphyrion, Porphyrion. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I am the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 32-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I read them as an adult because I was determining if society had been sleeping on the series. I said yes, and now I'm trying to see if society has also been sleeping on the sequel series, Heroes of Olympus. And to do that, I'm joined today by a special guest, someone you've heard on the podcast before. Very happy to have her back on the podcast. It's Morgan Danielle, who you might know as Imaginmatrix in various Percy Jackson cosplay stuff. Morgan, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to continue covering this very spicy portion of the book. We're getting into like big action mode. Fights are happening.
I was so surprised that I got to do these chapters. I was like, how has no one called these ones? These are so spicy.
Yeah, I guess it's just people were calling dibs on like other certain quirky chapters when it came to dibs calling, but it also was just, the way scheduling kind of worked out. I thought it would be a good fit, especially just the contrasting vibe of we had you in the past for the musical, which I feel like is very like fun and happy and silly. Yeah. And then it's like, let's have Morgan cover the big fight chapters. Yeah. So just kind of trying to give you the alpha and the omega.
I'm ready.
So before we get into chapters 49 and 50, we've asked you your history with the Percy Jackson books, but what is your history with the Heroes of Olympus books?
Yeah. So Heroes of Olympus, like I said, I read Percy Jackson as it was coming out. I read it for the first time in 2005, like literally a couple months after the first book. And then Heroes of Olympus, again, like just as they were coming out, I continued to read Rick's books. It was a different kind of deal. I will say I like Percy Jackson and the Olympians a lot more than Heroes of Olympus.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That's good. That's a good different perspective.
I like a lot of the new characters and I like a lot of things that happen in Hero of Olympus. And I had like a really hard time of like voicing why I liked Percy Jackson more until like recently where I like kind of like figured it out in my head. And like the best way I could describe it was like I felt like Percy Jackson was more mature, which felt really strange to me because I'm like, the writing's not different. The characters are older in Heroes of Olympus. There's like some pretty dark things that happen in Hero of Olympus and like stuff like that. And then I realized like there's like just some thematic things that are missing for me in Heroes of Olympus. Like I feel like I don't get like some of those things that I really enjoyed about Percy Jackson. Heroes of Olympus felt kind of more like, a Marvel action film. Okay. A little bit more where it's more about the fun, but there's still those dark things that happen. But I don't think it's like bad. I still really like Heroes of Olympus, but I think Percy Jackson's on like another level for me. And maybe that's just nostalgia talking, but I do still really love it. And I do think there's some really great things in there. It's a lot. And I will say one of the Heroes of Olympus books is like my least favorite book that Rick has ever written.
Oh, interesting.
Won't say which one.
Sure.
I've reread Percy Jackson so many times. And this year has been the first time I've been rereading Heroes of Olympus since I read all the books the first time.
Okay.
So I'm like remembering things because like I did remember quite a bit, but like, Lost Hero came out 2010,
I believe. Yeah. Either that or it was like published in 2010.
Yeah. So it was around the time I like started high school. So that was like over 10 years ago, almost 15 years ago. So yeah, this is my first time rereading them this year, just because I was like, I have only read a few of the Trials of Apollo books and the Magnus Chase books and some of the other books that are there in series. So I was just like, I want to reread all of them and just go through all of them.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm excited. I'm glad if being on this was the inspiration to check out everything, I am honored, and I would love for Disney Hyperion to cut me a check. But no, that's cool. And I totally get not necessarily liking one series versus the other. I think it also could just come down to personal preference. Like
Absolutely.
It could just be a first person narration versus third person narration thing.
Oh, yeah.
It could just be anything else in terms of the style. I can see what you're getting at with just like by it being third person and rotating between the narrators, it does feel more like plot gets described as opposed to a good chunk of the Percy Jackson books is just Percy as narrator kind of coming to grips with everything that is happening.
Yeah.
We still get some of that in Heroes of Olympus, but I don't think we're getting as much. I see that.
Like I said, I still love Heroes of Olympus. There are just like some things I'm like, oh, this could have been a little bit more delved into, or that was explored more. But like, those are just like, I wish this happened, and not, I'm so mad that they didn't do this, that like, I'm not going to like any of them. So I do like them. And my favorite part is like all the new characters in Heroes of Olympus and their personalities that come out.
Yeah. I've been enjoying them, and I think we should get into these chapters because they are fun and there's a lot to discuss. So let's get into it. Now, where we last left our heroes, I did realize only after recording, because I had to go very quickly after the recording. I forgot to do my thing where I retitled Chapter 48, as I've been doing for all of them. I've been giving them the fun, quirky Percy Jackson titles.
So here's the thing. When I was thinking, because I was like, I want to prepare some chapter titles. And one of them I came up with, I'm like, this is better for chapter 48. So I probably can't use that. So I'm like,
okay.
Oh my God.
Okay, so what was your one for 48? I forgot to do it with Jillian last episode. I did because it was the return of the Ice Princess. I did Let's Kick It because that's the beginning thing of Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice.
I said, my sister gets really cool.
Oh, nice. That's good. That's good. Yeah. And that's a good like twist thing where, especially because I forgot, like I just straight up forgot that Khione was a character. So I completely was tricked by this. If the chapter title was My Sister Gets Really Cool, I'd be like, oh, wow, Thalia probably joins the fight. That's awesome. I would not think, clearly Thalia will be frozen into an ice sculpture.
Yep.
So that's a good throw 'em off the scent title.
And that's so like Khione, or like, oh, she's just like, you know, a one-off character like they always run into throughout it. And then she comes back around. It's great.
Yeah, I completely forgot. So let's get into it. Now, where we last left our heroes, we had basically learned that Khione was back and she was kind of leading the charge. That makes sense of why all of this snow stuff has happened in not only the Wolf House here, but then, as Piper will say in this chapter, everywhere. And that made me realize, oh, right, she's right. How did I not think about this? So, chapter 49, it's called Jason, but we'll retitle it. So this one opens with, quote, after the fight on Mount Diablo, Jason didn't think he could ever feel more afraid or devastated. And at first, I just wrote my notes, oh, come on, it's just Ice Princess. You got this. You've defeated enchiladas. Like, I think you're going to be just fine with Ice Princess. But then the narration continues, quote, now his sister was frozen at his feet. And I was like, oh, right. That would be why he's extra sad. Never mind. And then it continues, he'd broken his golden sword and replaced it with a piece of wood. And then I wrote, right. So I had already kind of forgotten that, yeah, Jason, it's not just fighting Ice Princess. It is fighting Ice Princess in a set of truly terrible circumstances.
Yeah, it's just that emotional devastation. And then, you know, we don't have the same connection to Jason's gold sword, but I feel like it's almost as if Riptide was broken. That like emotional, I
have a lot of emotion for it, mainly just because I thought up of a cool pun for Jason sorting, and I've been calling it Fliptide.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's fair.
I'm interested to see if Fliptide comes back, and obviously, spoiler-wise, I won't be able to learn this, but I hope the coin sword comes back.
I don't remember either way, so.
Great. I hope it comes back.
Me too.
Not just because I like it, but because I really want to make some Fliptide merch.
You gotta.
And I can't.
I feel like you should either way.
Even if I might either way, because even the poster that we did for the Heroes of Olympus design, when I was working with the artist Timothy, I was like, yeah, Festus will be around for a while, I think. Yeah. So Festus is like the main kind of image. It still looks rad as hell, and it's still worth it.
I mean, it's the main cover of the book, so like might as well.
I figured, cool, Festus is our blackjack now. He'll be in all 5 books, and now I'm not so sure.
Well, and if Fliptide doesn't come back, you could like, you know, those like really like memey Comic Sans MS Paint sort
the
of
blank
t-shirts.
and blank and blank
well,
ones.
you can do like, you know, in loving memory of Fliptide 2010 to 2010.
Yeah. Right. All the fallen heroes, Festus, Fliptide, Leo's hopes and dreams of dating Khione. Yeah, just all the things that we've lost.
Exactly.
Now, I said that Jason was fighting under less than optimal circumstances. That is especially true because he only has about 5 minutes until Porphyrion is going to rise, and Jason thinks, well, I've already used my biggest power-up, Zeus Blast, so I probably can't do that again. And I was thinking, okay, but you probably won't have to fight a giant this time as long as you work quickly enough. And we'll just have to see. I did write in my notes in parentheses, in theory. So, I had the caveat in place. And I was thinking, you plus your other two friends plus the hunters, you can take down Ice Princess. I believe in you. But we'll have to see if that's actually all he needs to do.
Maybe he can do it.
Maybe he can do it. Mm-hmm. Now, Jason, as the narrator says, quote, his only assets were one whiny imprisoned goddess, fantastic, one sort of girlfriend with a dagger. Love this because I've been calling them semi-boyfriend and semi-girlfriend throughout the podcast.
It's such a good title.
So fantastic. And Leo, who apparently thought he could defeat the armies of darkness with breath mints. And this is a fun narrator thing that we haven't seen yet. I really am enjoying some of the things that the third person narration allows for. And I think this is an example of one narrator not understanding the full truth of the situation, because there is a world in which Jason thinks that Leo thought this was a good idea, because Leo never got a chance to say anything. We learned last chapter it was a mistake, but it was just internal monologue because he was nervous. He didn't say anything out loud. And also previously, Leo hyped up how cool the breath mints were. So it's not ridiculous to think that Jason would see this and go, Leo, enough with the freaking breath mints, man. Come on.
Exactly. And personally, my favorite style to write in is third person limited, which is what these are. It just switches who the limited perspective is. And I especially like that when the narrator isn't necessarily unbiased, where the narrator is third person, but they have the tone and style and personality of speaking as the person that they're coming from the point of view of, where you're kind of getting the thought process of the character, even though it's not necessarily they thought this, where you're getting that come out in the narration. I think it's just the most fun style to read and write in for me.
I think it's fun because I don't know what other books would be where it's more of a fully separated third-person narrator, but I like that with these, we still do get a little bit of personality. We have the Leo chapters like last time where he says something to Thalia, Thalia ignores him, and then the narrator says, oh, she must think he's really cool. So we're still kind of getting that personality. So I think that's more fun than just a straight up, here is what is happening. Exactly. I'm a completely unbiased party narrator. We still get the personality.
Yeah, it keeps that style of Percy Jackson, even though it's not in first person.
Exactly. Now, on top of everything we've already listed, Jason's memories are beginning to return, and though he knows he's been in more dangerous situations in the past, none have had him this close to death before, which I'm confused as to how that works, because I would think being the closest to death might be the more dangerous situation, but I don't know. I'm sure it's some sort of thing of the individual stakes versus the overall stakes. But whatever it is, we know things are dire and it's not looking good and the deadline is rapidly approaching. Jason recognizes that Khione is gorgeous, but yells at her. I love that he's yeah, she looks great, but we have to stop her.
We got to at least acknowledge that her hair and her skin, and she's, glowing today.
Sure. Look, as long as you don't do it in a weird, creepy way. I think paying someone compliments about their appearance is nice to say. Someone has a nice pair of shoes or a cool hairdo or whatever. That can go a long way. When strangers compliment my clothing or other appearance choices, gosh, it's so good because you know that they mean it. If some random person comes up to you and goes, I love your jacket, there's no vested interest. So that's just them liking it so much that they're going to communicate with a stranger. Oh,
it's my favorite thing. Praise. And I'm back in school for the first time in a few years. So I'm going to school with a bunch of Gen Zers and they are so open and generous with compliments. It's so nice. Because I didn't get a lot of compliments when I was in high school and stuff, which I didn't really care about. But sure. Being an adult person walking around and then being stopped every once in a while at school every day by just at least one person being hey, I love your hair. Hey, I love your outfit. I'm
yeah.
Man, I'm going to be writing this all day now.
It's good. I'm trying to do that also with social media usage. If you see something cool come across the timeline, I'm trying to take the extra step on Instagram, for example, not just click but put a little comment of nicely done or whatever. Because especially for me, because I just have most notifications just muted. So I can't see specifically which of my friends have liked a post or whatever, because I try to not be as sucked into my phone as I can be. So a comment I'll for sure see. So if you go the next step and you say the comment yeah, I'm trying to do more of that. I'm trying to embrace my dadness and do more cheesy complimenting of sorts, even if it makes me look like a goofball. You know what? I'm embracing it. I'm here. I'm in the era.
Exactly.
Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Jason recognizes Khione's gorgeous, yells at her, asking what she did. And Khione says, oh, so many things, before explaining that Thalia isn't dead, if that's what he's asking, but the plan is to defrost one of her/the hunters one by one and have the wolves hunt them for sport. So I just wrote my notes. Oh, cool. Worse than death. Just prolonged, scarier death. The wolves growl in approval, and Khione explains that the wolves were down to join her because Thalia nearly killed their leader, Lycaon, so they would love a little bit of revenge. Khione also reminds the team that Porphyrion will soon rise, which causes Hera to scream, traitor! And I'm thinking, traitor? Why a traitor? And then I guess because the wind gods usually work with Olympus, so I guess it's that sort of traitor situation that would have Hera upset.
Yeah, I feel like it's just any gods are assumed to be allied with Olympus, or at least are supposed to serve them and have them as like the pinnacle of their power structure. So her being like, I'm gonna go against you, it's considered a traitorous act.
Insubordination, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
Hera talks more trash. Khione hits her right back, saying that she's been looking to shut her up for millennia. And then with a wave of her hand, she fills the gaps in Hera's cage with ice. Jason accuses Khione of tricking Hera into coming here and convincing Zeus to close Olympus. And then I realized, oh, she's the conscience. She's this voice that the gods have been hearing. I thought that this was a Gaia thing, or my apologies, as I've been saying in the podcast, a Gia thing. So I had always kind of thought this was a Gia thing because she was still talking to people. Like she was talking to Leo. So I thought that the voice whispering and the mistress was her. But as this chapter went on, I'm realizing, as Jason realizes, oh, the voice is Khione, and I guess the mistress is Khione, which I had just completely not considered her coming back into the picture.
I do recall I hadn't considered that either when I first read it, because by that point I was a more conscious human being, being in my mid-teens instead of not even a preteen. But yeah, and I also love that she gets this like villain monologue. Like I love a good villain monologue.
It's good.
And she's doing all the pitfalls of like, I'm going to tell you every little thing before I kill you because I want you to know how cool I am.
But at least in her case, it could serve a purpose, as she brings up the deadline is approaching. So it's the one time where villain vamping is smart.
A little bit smarter than a lot of the guys we see monologuing in these books.
Totally. And it's funny given that Khione did come back, because I think the book tried to make you think Medea was going to come back. Because I also think someone made some sort of vague thing where they were like, oh, there's that woman who couldn't defeat you and she's so excited to get you again. And that was clearly supposed to be a Medea misdirect and instead was a Khione thing. I didn't even like think of that the next step. I was just so convinced that Medea was not coming back that I was just like, whatever. And I didn't think of like the next step of, what about that other evil lady? And I'm just going to chalk it up to this book being a lot longer and me having read that chapter. Like the course of this book is like 7 months of coverage for me. So like, yeah, maybe I forgot something that I read 4.5 months ago when I had a child with my wife in between.
Yeah.
So maybe I forgot something.
And it's funny, I haven't been able to listen to the podcast recently just because of like school and work
it's
and
all good.
stuff.
All good.
But
all
I
good,
think
all good.
I literally just listened to the episode where you met her for the first time. So it's for me, it's like, oh yeah, like 2 days ago.
Sure. For me,
but for
that
you,
was,
it's forever.
February, or it was probably, sometime in the summer. It's almost fall now. We're recording this in mid-September. Time. But the weather here in New York, slowly bringing my jackets back into play. It's delicious.
See, in Denver, we're probably going to be still wearing summer clothes until about October, where it's going to probably snow on Halloween. And then the next day it'll be 80 degrees and we'll be back to shorts.
Wee, Denver. Denver was great. I had a lovely time. with the strange weather. It was good. Beautifully sunny, and then I was still able to go skiing. A strange, magical place, Denver.
We can have all 4 seasons in a single day. It'll be like a blizzard in the morning and then like 80 by the afternoon.
Fun stuff. So Khione is happy to accept Jason's decision to talk and not fight, citing that the deadline might pass, so let's keep chatting. And she explains that her voice is gentle and cold, which is effective when whispering to the gods and confirming their greatest fears. So she's the one that's the conscience. She was the one in Aeolus's ear. And I gotta say, it's a pretty good twist. I truly just didn't see this coming at all. And I think it's a fun thing to have her come back. She's doing all of this in hopes that Gia will rise, learn of what she did in the ways of getting her sons back in power and risen from the earth, and then will reward her handsomely. And Jason wonders why she didn't just kill our team in Canada, and she says that it's messy to do it in her father's house, and does remind him that she did try to kill them basically by offering to turn them into ice, and they rejected her offer. But then she says that the real answer is that when her father granted them safe passage, she couldn't openly defy him right then and there. So that's really why it didn't happen.
And ancient Greece, like, is all about hospitality. Like, that is one of the core tenets of their society. You can't just insult a guest or try and kill them. Like, you see a lot of mortals in myths being punished for being inhospitable to gods in different ways. So it makes sense that she's like, oh, I could have done that then, but I tried to convince him.
Right. Now, she calls Boreas a fool who doesn't recognize his own power, and her plan is to get her new masters in charge and unseat Boreas from his throne. And then she adds that she did agree with her dad that Jason's quest was a hopeless mission, and truly she thought Jason wouldn't survive, so that was another factor in not killing him. She figured Jason would get himself killed, why would I even bother? Leo puts it together that the frozen wires in Festus's head were her. And my whole thing, I've just been attributing stuff that's happened to other people. I thought this was Enchiladas. I thought he had some sort of magical ability to do this. I thought the frozen wire aspect of it was just because they were up in the sky, not necessarily because Ice Princess. It does make me want to reread this book just to look at all of the bits of snow and ice, where clearly when I was reading, I was not thinking about it at all. But upon a reread, it probably is like, oh, look at all the seeds that were planted that I completely missed.
Yeah, and like I said, this is my first reread. So like I was seeing those things for the first time because I knew how it was going to end. So it was really fun to do that.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever on this podcast do reread full episodes just because there's so much stuff for me to cover, and that's not really kind of the thesis of the show. But it could be a Patreon thing where later down the road, if I'm just looking for a beach read and I want to reread the books, maybe when like seasons of the show are coming out or whatever, I would love to just like reread and then just do one episode of like, here's all the stuff that now, because it's my second time reading, it's like, oh, of course this happened in Titan's Curse, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. I think that could be fun.
I think that'd be cool. Definitely do it.
Yeah. So Piper realizes that Enchiladas knew about their status from her, citing that snowstorms have been a trouble of theirs all along the way. And this is something that I definitely realized, like, oh, right, it was snowy in Omaha, it was snowy in Chicago. The whole time I was just like, yeah, it's December. Like, I just chalked it up to that. But I guess especially when you have places like San Francisco that wouldn't be snowy in this time of year, that's more of a hint that she is behind all of this. So cool revelations that we've got going on here. Now, Khione adds that once the team escaped Omaha, she asked Lycaon to track them to facilitate Jason dying at the Wolf House because she thinks spilling his blood here would taint the sacred ground for generations and anger his demigod brethren. Her plan is to blame it on the Greeks and make the Roman demigods upset and think that the Greeks teamed up with the giants to bring back Gia. And honestly, this is a pretty good plan, especially when you combo it with shutting down Olympus, because who really knows what's going on? The people on this quest, and then the gods, the Olympian gods, and who's going to believe them if they come forward and saying like, no, it wasn't the Greeks. Like, if this was to go off without a hitch where our trio doesn't make it out of here, which, come on, they're going to make it. They're going to be fine. There's 4 more books to read. I do think that this is actually a really solid plan. In terms of all the plans of the villains, this is up there as one of the smartest for sure.
Yeah, she seems to know what she's doing. And she even says that like she wasn't honored by the Greeks. So maybe she's been like plotting something like this for millennia. She's like, you know what? I've never been respected. I'm going to bide my time. I'm going to come up with a plan. And when the perfect opportunity comes, that's when I'm going to do it. So maybe she's just been thinking about this all along.
Lot of time to stew on it. Khione thinks that Piper and Leo being amongst the dead bodies will be the cherry on top. Somehow Leo and Piper don't put together what's happening, but Jason does. She wants to pit the demigods against each other. And now I'm wondering, because I have thought that Roman versus Greek demigods could be a plot point throughout this series. I'm wondering if we might get a Spider-Man Far From Home / No Way Home thing where our heroes save the day, but the rumor is that they didn't. So like maybe they do save it, but then there's still this misconception that they were working with Gia, so then the Romans are still angry. I don't know what could happen, but that at least seems interesting to me.
Do Piper and Leo have a concept of the Roman demigods existing?
They have had some hints going on and on. I know something that the book doesn't know just from being a fan.
Cultural osmosis.
Right. Literally just like inescapable sort of things. But I don't think that's been like explicitly said, but it's become more and more of a hint that like there are some Roman demigods somewhere and they don't go to Camp Half-Blood, they do something else. So I think that they're beginning to get the idea of what's going on, even though they don't know specifically.
Yeah. And I know that if I don't know a full situation, like I'll look back and be like, duh. But like, especially in like a life or death moment, I imagine they're having difficulty with it. Whereas Jason's like starting to remember stuff. So with more information, he probably kind of gets more of what might happen here, I guess.
True. Piper asks, why do this? Because the giants are going to tear the world apart. And Khione accuses her of charm-speaking her, says it's not going to work because she's a goddess. And then to answer her question, she says that the wind spirits are agents of chaos and she wants to unleash the Venti on the world. And this is where I wrote in my notes, oh, is she the mistress? Just like finally putting it together. Khione says if the Venti do destroy the mortal world, so be it, even better, because they never honored her in ancient Greece. Quote, humans and their talk of global warming, I'll cool them down quickly enough. And not GOP Khione. Oh no. These humans and their pronouns.
Oh my God. Yeah, she's like, the stupid global warming. I don't believe it. I'm going to cool everything down. Or maybe she's like mad that humans cause global warming and she wants to reverse it in the extreme way. She's like, I'm going to cause an ice age instead. That'll fix it and show them.
Honestly, how do we get Khione to kind of do this for just like a little bit? If we could just drop the Earth temperature by like just like a couple degrees, just a few, just like a little bit, like let her cook a little bit and then defeat her.
Just
we could use it
maybe for like a week, maybe that would
just a week to kind of offset. Yeah, we'll run the numbers, see what can be done to offset Exxon and Shell and Chevron, and just a little bit chillier, and then it'll be okay. Now she ends this whole spiel with quote, "When we take over the ancient places, I will cover the Acropolis in snow." And Leo's eyes light up and he repeats the ancient places and then adds that is what Enchiladas meant when he said that they would destroy the roots of the gods. He wants to destroy Greece. Now, the crew is upset and worried about this, but I'm excited because that means, is one of these books going to take place in Greece? That would be so fun. We got a little bit international by showing up in Canada this time around, but if we go to a whole new continent, oh baby, it'd be real fun. Obviously, you can't spoil anything, so we'll continue.
Just smiles and shakes my head.
Smiles, nods, keeps the trapdoor in place. Khione offers Leo to join her, saying that she knows he has the odds for her, and that Jason and Piper dying is enough for her plan to work. Leo can be her champion, and they could put his skills to good use. He would be very helpful on their team. Leo looks stunned. He turns in a, are you talking to me or the person behind me kind of way. Jason, as narrator, is worried that Leo might consider it, knowing that Leo does find her attractive and might not get offers from literal goddesses every day. But then Leo doubles over in laughter, saying, quote, yeah, join you? Right. Until you get bored of me and turn me into a Leo-sicle? Lady, nobody messes with my dragon and gets away with it. I can't believe I thought you were hot. And we had Jason in the last chapter say this to Hera. We have Leo saying this to Khione in this chapter. The angry use of lady has been very fun in these past two chapters.
Just like, listen
lady. Here, lady. It's good. It's
one of my favorite things for like teens to say to an evil goddess or annoying goddess.
It's really fun. It's really fun. Now, another thing, maybe the way Leo defines hot is not just physically attractive. Maybe he doesn't see her as hot anymore, knowing her personality. I certainly have got that where like I know someone is conventionally attractive, but they're such a terrible person that I like maybe his using of hot is not just like I recognize your standard objective attraction. However, Leo, people can be hot and evil, you know.
Sometimes the evilness makes them hot.
That's also a thing. And I was trying to think of like a real life example of this because, of course, you would think of like villains in video games or movies like Minthara in Baldur's Gate 3. Like, you know, there's all sorts of like, oh, like so hot, so evil.
I can't do an evil run because I will feel so bad. I am going to do a Dark Urge run and I'm very excited for that. But I'm also really stressed because I can't be mean to people in video games.
Yeah. Oh, I can't. I hate it.
I'm never going to get to like have a run with Minthara without like, I don't know, cheats or mods or something.
Well, In the new patch, because I've started patch 6 and now patch 7 is out.
Oh, yeah, because I haven't played for a while.
Yeah, so you can do a good run and you don't have to get like too weird with the stuff. You can get her on your squad, and then there's like a thing that makes the lore of it make sense of why she would be with you, even if you're doing a heroic run. So you can do it. But it is fun because even though she is like mostly good, she will still every now and then be like, and then I will take over the world. And you're like, no, Minthara, you can't. And then she's like, we disagree, but we will still move forward.
That's such a like classic villain thing. Like I feel like you see a lot of that in like Supernatural, the TV show, and like a lot of those like things where you have like the big bad guy in a lot of books and shows where they're big and bad and evil and the biggest evil. And then they kind of just get kind of humbled. And then suddenly they're like their weird friend who tags along and still says unhinged things sometimes. Best trope.
It's fun. And we will end this tangent by me just saying that I have really enjoyed saying Menzo Baranzan all the time. That's her hometown in the game. And it's what a fun word. Menzo Baranzan, especially in her voice where she's like, I'm from Menzo Baranzan. Oh, it's so good. Never fails to hit. Anyway, Percy Jackson.
Absolutely.
So, all this was to say, I was trying to find like a real life example. I couldn't figure it out. I Googled like conservative celebrities, all ugly.
Oh, yeah. I cannot see them as attractive. I have the same thing where if I know someone's personality, I can't see any attraction there.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter.
I guess that's what Leo's going for, as opposed to like objective hot sort of thing. But you could be hot and evil. Wasn't that all Ted Bundy's thing that he was like really hot and then he killed people, right? Wasn't that like a whole thing? They cast Zac Efron as him in a movie, so he must be hot,
He's
right?
not even that attractive. He's just a white man. Like, is the thing. I think...
Was he just tall, white, and had Riz, as the kids would say?
Here's the thing with like finding villains attractive. Khione could agree politically with stuff like that, but she's just cartoonishly evil. Like, it makes me think more of like maybe if someone was like left wing or whatever, but then did something like cyber hacking terrorism and you know takes down a bunch of systems. I'm like, you know, I see what you're doing here, but like it caused some dangerous issues. So it's like,
right, yeah.
You know,
where does the morality come into play?
Yeah, it's that more kind of like higher up. Like it's usually the villains that you can kind of relate to. And be like, I get it. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, what I always say, the Killmonger one, where you're like, I see what you're going for. You're going about it in the wrong way, but I see what you're trying to do.
That's why so many young girls who read Percy Jackson think Luke is hot.
Gosh. And now Charlie's a good-looking kid. Like, come on.
And he's done such a good job playing Luke. I like
the scar. Come on, no.
They've done to the character.
Right. Enough tweaks where we have to show Luke and book Luke are going to be two different people in my brain, and I'm okay with it. I like a more redeemable Luke. I think it's going to be fun to see how the show continues to do it because they've done a great job in season 1.
Yeah. I like both versions, but I'm also someone who finds book Luke to be not redeemable, but understandable how he got to that point.
Yes. I feel like I've heard, I don't forget which of the Percy Jackson podcasters, but I've definitely heard people say like not being a Luke apologist, but being a Luke understander. Like still recognizing he's wrong, but like kind of seeing where he's coming from. So,
absolutely.
I see it. Now, Khione takes offense to being called hot, which is a great bit since she's the Ice Princess. She goes, hot? You dare insult me? I am cold, Leo Valdez. Very, very cold. And she shoots a blast of sleet at them. Leo holds up his hand and creates a wall of fire, and it melts. Very Neo in the Matrix, putting his hand up to stop all of the bullets. And then he says, quote, see, lady, that's what happens to snow in Texas. It freaking melts. And Leo is keeping his core of doing cool things and then saying lines that are not cool immediately afterwards. Good job, Leo.
I love him. He's such a dork.
Such a dork. Khione's had enough of them, orders her minions to kill them so that they can be served to their new king as his first meal. And then the chapter ends with, quote, Jason hefted his icy wooden plank, a stupid weapon to die fighting with, and the monsters charged.
Feels like such a Percy line.
It's very Percy coded for sure. So I have retitled chapter 49, It's Getting Hot in Here, to counteract. And yes, I did spell here with 2 R's like Nelly would want us to. So that is what I've done just to counteract the bad song of Ice Ice Baby previously, now with a good song, Hot in Here by Nelly.
Love that. I did like one of the longer Percy Jackson style chapters. So it was like either like my best friend melts an ice princess's heart, because that it sounds one way, but it's the other way, or like my best friend gives the cold shoulder.
Very fun. Very
so I was like, you could go in either direction, and you think
like
one thing and it's the other. So
yeah. All right. Well, that is going to bring us to our mid-roll break, The Lost Euro, where we'll talk about updates with the podcast and such, whether that's live shows, merch, Patreon things, and more. And then we'll come back to round this out with discussing chapter 50. Hello and welcome to the Lost Euro Shubio edition, but just barely, because in a matter of hours I will be boarding a flight to New Orleans, Louisiana, where I have a live show on October 24th. It's half Potterless, half the Newest Olympian. It's all a good time. Kelly's going to be the guest. It's her first time guesting since becoming a mother, so that's a very exciting return. It's been a minute since she's been on the stage live with me. I'm so excited to have her back, and I'm excited to get into the rest of this update. There's other updates for you besides the live show, but if you want to see that live show, head on over to thenewestolympian.com/live. First, just something in reference to the last episode of the Newest Olympian. Jillian and I did not realize that hobo is actually a proper historical technical term that has been misused very popularly by society to be a derogatory way to refer to a homeless person. A hobo traditionally just meant that you were a migrant worker in the United States. You would move around, you would travel, you would work, but you didn't necessarily have a set location. And that is what Jack London was. So when this book is saying that Jack London was a hobo, they mean that he was a hobo, not that he was a hobo derogatory in parentheses. My apologies. Didn't know that about the word. Didn't know that about Jack London. I didn't read Call of the Wild, as we said in the podcast, but shout out to the folks who have let me know. So our bad. And thank you for teaching me and maybe now teaching all of you who didn't know. Now, as far as updates with the podcast, we are soon going to be concluding our coverage of The Lost Hero. We've got 2 more episodes about The Lost Hero, and then after that, we're going to be doing the in-between episodes. We'll do a Dr. Moya myth recap episode. We will also be doing an episode from a past live show in Vienna, Virginia, where Delia Gallegos and I went over Percy Jackson, The Ultimate Guide. So we'll have those as the interstitial episodes, and then we'll get right into our Son of Neptune coverage. Very excited for that, and if you cannot wait for some of the Son of Neptune goodies, you don't have to, because if you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, we've already got some stuff that can give you a peek into what is to come in the Son of Neptune content, whether that's me doing a live stream of Jenna and I doing a big plot twist reveal from one of the early chapters, to me posting footage from some of our recent live shows that have been covering the Son of Neptune, and also eventually we will be putting that live show of the first 2 chapters that we did, the New York live stream. We'll put that up for purchase directly on the Patreon in case you are unable to get that replay and the download and all that kind of stuff. So if you want those sneak peeks into Son of Neptune coverage, the TNO Patreon is where you want to go. There's other fun stuff going on the TNO Patreon. New bonus episode is about to go up. New director's commentaries have been up. New monthly Q&As. Lots of fun stuff going over on the Patreon. Also, I did talk about live shows. We do have some other live shows on the horizon. We've got a live show in Philly on November 7th, and we've got that reschedule of the Vienna, Virginia show on December 3rd, and we've got a show in Austin, Texas on December 16th. You can get tickets to all those shows at thenewestolympian.com/live. And then, of course, there's that New Orleans one that I already mentioned. Now, I've mentioned the Patreon a couple times here. I want to give a shout out to the folks who have joined the Patreon most recently. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Coral M, Julia, Stephen McGinnis, Benadryl48, Christopher Ott, the daughter of Neptune 337, and Ashley Myville. And shout out to our newest demigod tier patrons, Mary, Brooke, Not Important, Taylor Leal, Unknown Username 1, Amanda Blankenborg, Michael Pluto, Alexa H., Shay Lawson, and Autumn Whitehorn. Thank you all so much for your support. May Hera, the mother goddess, may she bless you that if you are flying with a little one on a plane, you can use your parenting abilities to keep them nice and calm. Let's just hoping we can make it happen on that plane later today. Now, if you're all caught up on the Newest Olympian and you're looking for some new content to consume, you're in luck, because I make a lot of content, and it's not just podcast stuff. There's other things I do, and in this episode, we talk a lot about D&D, and a big reason that I've been talking about it more recently is because I've been doing a D&D live stream with some other podcast nerds called 20 to Midnight. You can watch replays of our streams over on YouTube. You can watch the actual streams on our Twitch account, which is 20 to Midnight, 20 TO Midnight. I've been playing a little bit recently because I took a break ever since Kelly and I had a child, but there's hours upon hours of content already up. And then if things settle down, I'm going to get back into the mix at some point. So check out 20 to Midnight. It's fun. It's a good time. And the people who make it with me are absolutely wonderful human beings. So check that out, 20 to Midnight on Twitch and YouTube. And before we get into the sponsor stuff, we do have a new sponsor, just to give you an alert before you skip the ads, which is fine. But we've got a new sponsor, Pretty Litter. They make really cool cat litter and other cat toys and fun stuff like that. So stick around if you want to hear that. But if you're listening on Patreon, you get ad-free episodes. So you won't hear that as well. And if you're listening on not Patreon, this is the point where you'll hear some ads that are read by me, such as that Pretty Litter ad, and others that aren't read by me. The ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in the Philippines, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in Filipino or in English. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back into this episode of the Newest Olympian. And we're back. We're here for chapter 50. It's also called Jason, but we'll retitle it. And this one opens with, quote, "A wolf launched itself at Jason. We are wasting no time. We are in Fight Town. The fight has begun, and the battle rages on." Jason smacks it in the head with his new weapon. He then hears a storm spirit horse charging at him. So he summons some wind and shoots himself into the air before the horse can get him. He then mounts the wind horse, which is very cool. The wind horse tries to buck Jason off, but it is not able to do so. Jason is able to control it even though it fights against him, and he now realizes how Aeolus could have gone mad after centuries of trying to contain thousands of wild storm spirits. So he recognizes the difficulty in doing this, but he is able to successfully tame this beast, and that is a very cool vibe.
It makes me almost wonder if like these storm spirits almost take on like the personality of what form they have, because like horses, like, you know, I don't know how accurate it is. I wasn't a horse girl growing up, but I do feel like in fiction a lot, though, they show people taming horses by getting on them and then like refusing to be bucked off. And then suddenly the horse respects you or something.
Exactly. It's always that. Yeah. It's like a Charizard.
It's also funny because I know he shoots himself in the air and like turns and lands on it. But every time I read it, because I just reread it and then I reread it again for this, I picture Jason doing like a Legolas sort of flipping onto the horse thing like he does in Two Towers.
That 100%.
Like,
I 100% imagine that.
Grabbing it and just swinging up. Oh my gosh. Like I was like, it's his Legolas moment.
I thought exactly that. So we're at least on the same page. So Jason rides the horse around and it causes mini thunderstorms, tempests, where its hooves hit the ground. And Jason asks if its name is Tempest, and the horse shakes its mane in appreciation of being recognized. And Jason commands it into battle. And this rules. This is awesome. I love this so much. Jason rides through, swinging his new weapon at any wolves and just charging through Venti, and they poof away. The electricity vaporizes them into mist when they ride through. Jason then takes note of what Piper and Leo are up to. Piper is surrounded by Earthborn, but she's holding her own. Jason thinks, and also the Earthborn seem to as well, that she looks beautiful as she fight. And the reason that the Earthborn are thinking this is because Jason can see them look mesmerized. They kind of lower their weapons and just stare and smile at her as she rips them to shreds. So this is a cool Charmspeaky Aphrodite, how it would be useful in battle. It's like a distraction sort of thing. And I like seeing the different aspects of how Aphrodite kids can use their powers, not just for talking their way out of situations, but also fighting their way out.
It makes you wonder, like, how much of Charmspeak is merely like directing action versus like how much of it is in expression. Because it does seem like, you know, Piper can Charmspeak things without them looking directly at her, but it also seems she can Charmspeak things without actually speaking and just giving off an aura of, I'm so pretty and you're distracted. So it does make me wonder, like, you know, how far that power can go in either direction. If she can play with that and do some really interesting stuff, if she doesn't have to talk to convince people of things or doesn't have to be seen to do it as well, which I think we have seen, but it's just interesting if it's just more powerful together but it does seem to be an aspect of her abilities.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun to see as the book goes on what exactly being an Aphrodite kid, and then also with Leo, a Hephaestus kid, what that sort of entails. Because by the end of PGO, we get that for some of the other cabins, but not for those two. So it's been fun to see. And even with Jason as well, with Zeus, because weirdly, Thalia didn't have a lot of stuff. Like, she couldn't fly. That was completely new. She had the lightning stuff, but it's fun to learn new things about the different cabins.
To be fair, I don't think she ever tried to fly because she's
exactly
terrified of heights.
Yeah. Leo is taking on Khione solo, and normally demigod versus god straight up would be a terrible idea, Jason thinks, but because fire is super effective against ice, Leo is burning off everything that she throws at him. He is fully on fire, and he's swinging silver-tipped ball-peen hammers in each hand at any monster that comes his way. The silver is very smart for this fight, given the wolves. Not good for a real hammer, though, because silver is pretty soft as a metal, but it is fun that he actually has the ball-peen hammers now, because in the last episode I talked about how I had mistaken the hammers he was using in the past. I thought he was using just like ball-peen hammers, but he was using probably more of like a sledgehammer. So it's funny for me to have that realization and talk about it in the last episode. And now in this episode, he's using the regular hammers that I thought he was using the whole time.
Yeah, because I also just imagine like a regular ball-peen hammer, but maybe he has more of like a forge sort of hammer probably with his dad.
Yeah, like a big two-hand, long handle one, which is cool. Hey, this is Mike from the future here, jumping in to say that what I have described here is cool, but you know what is cooler? Being more accurate. So I got to give a shout out to Leon Sexton, who's the person who originally threw a comment on Spotify. You can now leave comments on Spotify if that's where you listen to the podcast. It's pretty cool. Leon is the one who originally let me know that my idea of what this hammer was wrong. I was originally thinking normal hammer, and they said, no, it's a big hammer. And now Leon has helpfully let me know in the comments again that I have overcorrected in the last episode and then repeated it in this episode. It's not a big sledgehammer. Instead, I don't know how else to better describe a 3-pound hammer other than you should just Google it, but it's kind of got like a chunky handle and like a big, more mallet-y looking top. And once I saw it, I was like, oh, one of those hammers? So yes, it's one of those hammers. My apologies for getting this so constantly incorrect for all the hammer aficionados out there. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast. Jason realizes that they would all be dead without Leo, and now I'm remembering, oh right, prophesized that Leo would be the most important. Jason thinks that Leo isn't just keeping us alive, his fire is weakening the powers of the evil minions here, because as Leo moves around, he's melting the snow all around everywhere he steps. He even defrosted Dolly a bit when he was close to her, so it is really helpful that Leo is here in particular, because yeah, if you don't have a fire person, and fire people are seemingly very rare, as we've heard, you'd be screwed. They need Leo. So I can totally see these claims of Leo being the most important. It actually makes sense here. And that's why the gods would really make sure he's part of the prophecy. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I guess in the evil people's case, well, they would keep him out of the prophecy.
It's also like a good moment for Leo because he like keeps comparing himself to Jason as a hero. And he's like, Jason's so cool. And like, you know, even if he doesn't remember stuff, you know, he has these powers and he clearly knows what he's doing. And like, you know, we see Medea pit them against each other with that and playing into that. So it's cool for like Leo to be doing something and Jason watching him like, man, he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and I would hope that by the end of this book, the trio recognizes that each of them is good in different situations. Piper's great for talking them out of stuff. Jason is great for just like big fight stuff. And then Leo's fire powers and his machinery powers are really good in very specific situations. So I would hope they realize, oh, it's not necessarily that one of us is better than the rest. It's more of we have different situations where one of us is most adept for that circumstance.
Yeah.
And our diversity is our strength. And especially if we're bringing in a full 7, and I don't know exactly who they're going to be, but you'd think like, okay, Percy's here. He's good for water stuff. Annabeth is here. She can plan things. Like I would hope they fully embrace the team ensemble dynamic as opposed to ranking themselves. I think everyone's got their particular thing.
Yeah. And I also feel like it's not just their powers that work well, but each of them have a mind for strategy, but in different situations. So like Piper has her experiences with Hollywood and then her Charmspeak. So like, not only can she, you know, use the Charmspeak, but she can think about situations in a different way and how to solve them. And then Leo has a very good mind for fixing things and solving puzzles. So like he also can come up with those strategies. And then Jason has a mind for a battle and stuff. So it's really interesting too, because it's not just their powers, but like the way their minds work in different capacities that suit them for different situations and knowing how to use those powers or how to use their friends' powers to solve what they're going through too. Where they don't just say, 100%. Oh, I could do this. They go, oh, my friend could do this. I like that too.
Yeah, and we'll see that with Leo knowing a good situation for Piper to jump in a little bit.
Exactly.
So Khione's backing up, now panicked. Jason has defeated every non-Earthborn minion, and Piper has defeated all the Earthborn. So the minions, screwed. They're done. Jason sees Leo going in on Khione, who says that they are too late as the king of the giants is awake. She says Hera's plan has failed and the demigods will be at each other's throats soon enough. But Leo then sets his hammers on fire and throws them at Khione, but she turns into a snow version of herself, and then the hammers break through and turn her into a puddle. I don't know exactly what this means. I don't know if this means she's like teleported away.
Yeah, I think it's just a flair for the dramatic. It's just a leaving in style sort of situation.
I guess, like, she's gone, but not defeated. She'll potentially come back, but she's fleeing the situation.
It's not cool enough to just disappear.
Right.
She's got to leave a little snow sculpture behind.
Leave a little calling card, yeah. Piper compliments Jason's horse, and I'm realizing, oh my goodness, is this Jason's blackjack? And then Tempest rears back on its hind legs, shooting electricity from its hooves, and then narrator Jason says, a complete show-off. And it is blackjack! Oh my gosh! I don't know if Tempest is going to stick around, but if Tempest does, oh man, if we get a Tempest and blackjack meeting scene... delicious. Oh my gosh. What if they become best friends? What if they become romantically interested? Oh my goodness.
Oh man, I love that. I also just feel like so many heroes just need a horse or a mount of some sort.
You need a steed.
If you can just ride into battle or like, mow down enemies with a horse or a giant dog, if you want to bring Mrs. O'Leary into it, like,
yeah.
Man, it just kind of adds that level of like, being super cool.
Especially for a kid's book. A kid being like, oh, cool. Like, that's the kids reading this book. They're going to think that's the coolest thing in the world. Adults reading it think it's the coolest thing in the world. Come on, he's got a wind horse that shoots electricity. What's not that long?
It's so cool. It's perfect for him, too.
Mm-hmm. Jason then hears the ice fall off of Hera's cage, and she sassily says, don't mind me, just the... hold on, my autocorrect? Change it to just the Queen of the Beans dying over here. It's definitely not Queen of the Beans.
No,
what's the actual quote?
Demeter, probably.
Yeah, Queen of the Beans. What is it
probably
supposed to...
Queen of the Gods?
Oh, here it is. Okay, Queen of the Heavens. Queen of the Heavens. No, all right. Hera's now Queen of the Beans. Just the Queen of the Beans dying over here. And I wrote up minutes. Gosh, she sucks so much. Jason dismounts Tempest, telling it to stay put, and our trio rushes over to Hera, Queen of the Beans. And Leo asks if she's getting shorter, and she calls him a dolt, saying that the earth is claiming her. Tells them all to hurry, and as she sinks, the narrator Jason tells us that the earth fills the cage with, quote, liquid rock. And I was like, liquid rock? That doesn't mean anything. What does that mean? Later, they describe it as mud, and I was like, oh, I guess? I don't know that I would call that liquid rock, though. Like, wouldn't that technically be magma? Isn't that liquid rock?
It is, but I kind of imagine, like, they're gods. They can bend physics in ways that don't make sense. So
True.
I could also see it, like, maybe it looks like mud later, but like starting out, it just looks like stone that is acting like a liquid and like filling it in that way where it looks like rock, but your brain is like, why is it moving like a liquid? What's going on here?
Mm-hmm. Hera says the giant is waking, so they have mere seconds. Leo says he's on the case. He turns to Piper and instructs her to talk to the cage. Now, for some reason, this isn't immediately clear to Piper what she needs to do. It's very straightforward instructions. But Leo then explains that she needs to Charmspeak to it. It is an extension of Gia, so she should convince her to stay asleep. And at the very least, this will slow her down, and Leo can try to work on the cage as Piper gets the tendrils loose. Something. At the very least, this can't hurt the situation, and Leo's going to get to work.
In Piper's defense, I can relate to I need an explanation of why I'm doing something really strange.
1,000%.
Like, if you told me to talk to an inanimate object, even if I had talking powers, I'd be like, wait, what? Huh?
What's my motivation?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're telling me to do something, I need to know the reason why, or else my brain just won't accept it.
Totally get it. Piper starts off with some less than stellar charm speak, basically charm small talk, but she does ramp it up, and with each sentence, with each word, she sounds more and more confident to Jason, and it becomes so effective that Jason gets a little bit drowsy, so he has to kind of remind himself, wait, you can't listen to what she's saying. And the rising mud, as Jason identifies it, so I wrote in my notes, in the cage slows, the tendrils soften, so instead of being a rock-like texture, they're more of like a tree root wood-like texture. And then Leo pulls out a circular saw, which feels awesome, but he can't figure out where to plug it in. And I'm imagining like the Greek retelling of this story, just, eons later. It's like, and Leo Valdez whipped out a circular saw, just like so modern, so funny. but he can't think of anywhere to plug it in. And I wrote in my notes, electric horse. And thankfully, Tempest knows the situation, jumps into the pit. Jason asks, is this really going to work? Tempest drops its head. Leo plugs it into the freaking horse, and the saw comes to life.
Man.
So I wrote in my notes, yes.
Perfect portable phone charger. Like,
oh my gosh, so useful. So I had written yes in my notes, and then the narrator said, quote, their good mood didn't last long. So then I wrote, no. The other cage crumbles and the tendrils explode. Quote, Jason hadn't thought anything could be scarier than enchiladas. Line break. He was wrong. Ugh, Rick knows how to format. Now, Porphyrion is bigger than enchiladas. He's more muscular. He seems to have a magnetism about him, but like a literal magnetism. Like he's so big that he has his own gravitational field. Just like enchiladas, he's humanoid from the waist up and dragon-legged from the waist down. His skin color is that of lima beans. He has green hair that is braided into long locks, and it's weaved with weapons of all sorts inside of it. Some of them are bloodied and broken, so we would think it is from vanquished people who tried to defeat him. And his eyes are blank white, like they're just made out of marble. And that is the scariest part out of anything. Anything described, all white, glossed over eyes, terrifying.
Yeah, it's like you hear the color of a lima bean and you're like, that's a little not super scary. But then if you combine that with the whiteout eyes, like that kind of elevates that description for me.
Yes, totally. So then Porphyrion says, alive, praise to Gia. And then the narrator, Jason, says, Jason made a heroic little whimpering sound he hoped his friends couldn't hear. Great. Love the little personality thing of Jason here, letting us know he's not just cool fight boy. He also is a little bit scared about what's going on. So Jason thinks there's no way a demigod can take this guy on solo. And I'm thinking, Hera is here. You can do the god plus demigod thing with her. Come on. But then Jason also has to snap Leo and Piper out of this situation because they are also dazed. But they get back working on the cage. Piper asks Jason if he's really going to one-on-one this dude. And Jason says he has no choice. And then Porphyrion starts talking. And he's great because he just goes, excellent, an appetizer. Who are you, Hermes, Ares? Love the vibe. But I don't love the situation for Jason because it's not good when your opponent is confident in defeating you and thinks you might be a literal god. That is a lot of self-confidence in this enemy.
Also the god of war, too.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's
what
like,
are you, the best fighter ever? I got you.
Yeah. Not very encouraging.
Mm-hmm. Jason thinks about lying, which is always my move in D&D. Always try to lie your way out of any situation, but he instead goes with honesty, saying that he is Jason Grace, son of Jupiter. And Porphyrion keeps his awesome vibe going by saying, outstanding. So Zeus, you sacrifice a son to me? The gesture is appreciated, but it will not save you. Gosh, he rules so much. The sky is silent, so Jason knows, okay, cool, I'm on my own. Jason drops his makeshift weapon, knowing that he needs a proper one to buy Leo and Piper time, and then he says, quote, if you knew who I was, you'd be worried about me, not my father. He says he hopes that Porphyrion has enjoyed his 2.5 minutes of rebirth because Jason's going to send him back to Tartarus. Let's go, Jason. Really good trash talk. Where Percy is more of the sassy trash talk, Jason is just like, hit him with the devastating trash talk, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I also feel like in these chapters, Jason has I've started to remember things and remember my past in history, and I kind of know who I have been.
Yeah.
Jason clearly has a sense of humor throughout the book, and he has a very distinct personality of his values and stuff and kind of person he is, and he's just an all-around good guy. But I think in these chapters, you really start to see this sense of humor and this confidence that he didn't have before. He's I know who I am better now, and I know what kind of person I am. So you see that come through in the narration and in his dialogue and stuff, which I think is fun.
Yes. Now, even though Jason hit him with some really solid trash talk, Porphyrion is not fazed, and he is just excited to return the boasting. He says he rose from Tartarus to challenge the gods, and he stole Hera, then turns and greets Hera. Great move. And then Hera says, Zeus defeated you once, he'll do it again. But Porphyrion corrects that Zeus alone did not do it. He needed the help of puny demigods, and even then, they barely won. This time will be different, because Gia is supplying them with many helpful servants. He says they will shake the earth and destroy their roots, and Hera says, oh, you wouldn't dare. And I'm wondering if this would end, the whole book series is going to end with the gods moving back to Greece. Is North America over and Olympus goes back to Greece after they save Greece? Could be interesting. I don't know. You can't say anything, so we'll continue. Now, the earth is still rising in Hera's cage, so not a good situation. Porphyrion says that the Titans going after Olympus in New York was a foolish decision. He says that Gia knows that the gods must be dug up from the roots like rotten trees. So they are really trying to go for the Grease thing here. Porphyrion takes notice of Leo and Piper, so then Jason yells at him to keep him occupied and not focused on them. So he basically asks Porphyrion, how could a demigod, you've called them puny, how could a demigod defeat you last time? And Porphyrion says he's not going to fall for the trick of explaining how he could be bested. And I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think that was Jason basically being like, hi, what's the cheat code? Where are your glowing red circles that I need to hit? So instead, Porphyrion says that he was made to be Zeus's replacement, and he will be Lord of the Sky when they win. He says his current form is weaker than his normal form, and he will grow stronger by the hour, but he is already strong enough to defeat Jason. And honestly, I do kind of believe him, so Jason's got to work quickly.
Yeah, and I think in mythology, he was defeated by Zeus and Heracles in tandem.
Yeah.
So it's like...
top demigod.
Top god, yeah.
A demigod who became a god, yeah.
So maybe a little bit of a tall ask for Jason here.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. So Porphyrion straightens up, extends his hand, and a 20-foot spear shoots up from the ground into his hand. Cool vibe again. This guy rules. As much as you're supposed to dislike him and hate him and be afraid of him, he's really cool. He's a really cool villain. He then stomps his feet, and all of the minions that we've seen, each of those sorts of villains, gather around the team. Hera tells Leo to hurry. He yells that he knows. Piper keeps going at the cage, recognizing the absurdity of the situation, but she still keeps it up. Porphyrion says that his boasting is over and asks Jason to respond. I love that this is a Lincoln Douglas debate. Hello, I finished mine. Now a rebuttal, please? Jason then summons the winds to give it extra oomph as he says that he is the son of Jupiter, a child of Rome, consort demigods, praetor of the First Legion, and Jason, as the narrator admits to us, I don't really know what I'm saying, but it does sound like stuff I've said before, so I'm just going to kind of roll with it like this is my standard spiel.
It's a good spiel.
It's a good spiel. It sounds very impressive. He then shows off his tattoo. The enemies recognize it. Porphyrion does look a bit uneasy. So again, I'm thinking, all right, we got to see like what the tattoo really means. But I do like that every time someone sees it, it's a big deal. So clearly it's something. Jason then continues that he slew a Trojan sea monster. He toppled the Black Throne of Kronos. He destroyed Krios with his own hands, and he will now destroy Porphyrion and feed him to his wolves. Jason, I'm so impressed. This is really good trash talk.
Yeah, and it's also like, you get snippets of like, what has Jason been doing this whole time? Mm-hmm. What does this all mean?
And the toppling of the throne and all of that, does that mean, I guess he was doing that at the same time that the Battle of Manhattan was going on? Like Jason was over there doing that stuff because we saw things with Krios and the throne, like all of that was going on. So I guess simultaneously he was doing that while we were reading book 5. Dang, so cool. I can't wait for Jason and Percy to have a conversation. Oh, it'll be so fun. It'll be so fun. But yeah, I do like that basically Jason rolled nat 20 on the intimidation check here. Just like straight up as intimidating as humanly possible.
Nat 20 like with +7 or something like that.
Right, like still a nat 20, but he's like, but also I have a +12 intimidation. Like it really is a 32. Leo then, recognizing this, asks Jason if he's been eating red meat. Fantastic. Jason then launches himself at Porphyrion, fully aware of how absurd this situation is. Even Porphyrion is shocked, but Jason lands on his knee and then crawls up, and Porphyrion asks him if he dares to do this, and Jason gets up to his shoulder and rips out a sword, and then I realize, oh, he said he needed a proper weapon. This is more of a proper weapon. He then screams, "For Rome!" and stabs him in the ear, and lightning blasts the sword. It shoots Jason off the giant. I didn't know when this happened. I was thinking, like, is this a Zeus thing? Is this just because Jason has lightning powers? At this point, I was unsure because we had the sky being silent before. So I was thinking, okay, this could go either way. Maybe Zeus is still helping. Maybe this is just Jason putting a little extra oomph into the fight as well. And when Jason lands and looks up, he sees that Porphyrion's face is blackened from this lightning blast and his hair is on fire. Ichor is rolling down his ear. The other weapons braided into his hair are sparking. And then the other minions start to approach Jason. But Porphyrion halts them because he wants to defeat Jason himself. And he raises his spear. It begins to glow. Didn't like that. Since it was made out of the earth, I was like, why would it glow? What would make it glow?
Some other special thing about maybe it just like has like a little switch, like those light up like toy swords that you can get for kids.
Oh yeah.
And he just has
yeah.
a switch built in so he can like make it a little cooler.
Just vibes.
A little bit
purely
more intimidating.
So then he tells Jason, oh, you want to play with lightning? You're forgetting that I'm basically anti-Zeus. I was created to destroy your father, which means I know exactly what will kill you. And the narrator, Jason, lets us know something about his voice made it seem like he wasn't bluffing. So I'm quite terrified, already terrifying. But if he has the knowledge of how to beat Jason on top of the strength clearly to do so, Jason, as the narrator, is thinking, well, our team, we had a good run. We've done a whole lot. We've done some heroic things. But he's thinking, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. But just as Jason thinks that all hope is lost, he hears Leo scream, got it. And then Piper screams, sleep, as loudly and as forcefully as she can. All of the wolves instantly fall to the ground. The cage that Harrow's in crumbles because Leo had just broken up enough of it where the tendril that was holding it all together just fell apart and they all turn to dust. The mud disintegrates and then Hera grows in size and glows with power and screams, yes! And then she throws off her black robes to reveal a white gown, which is a very cool vibe. And she's decked out in golden jewelry all in her arms. Jason says her face was, quote, both terrible and beautiful. And she has a golden crown that is glowing with her long black hair showing. And she says, now I shall have my revenge. And as much as I hate Hera, we really need some help right now. So I'm glad she's here. Please save us, Hera. Oh my God.
Love her here.
Here
She
and only
bothers
here.
me otherwise.
Yeah.
But
I love her in this
here.
specific situation.
Good energy to bring to the party here.
Exactly. Porphyrion backs away, doesn't say anything. He shoots dagger eyes at Jason that clearly send the message of another time. And I was thinking, oh no, is he going to vanish away? And what he does is he slams his spear against the earth and then he just disappears into the ground as if he fell down a hole. So yes, we don't get him defeated. We do get the lingering threat of his return. And once he leaves, all of the monsters start to freak out. They retreat, but there's no escape. Hera glows even brighter and tells everyone to cover their eyes. And Jason, unfortunately, was too much in shock. He understood too late, and he watches as Hera turns into a supernova. So we've had this hinted when she showed us, look, I can't even break this cage. Now she's actually doing it. And the final little paragraph of this chapter says, quote, he watched as Hera turned into a supernova, exploding in a ring of force that vaporized every monster instantly. Jason fell, light searing into his mind, and his last thought was that his body was burning. Now, I don't think that Jason's going to die here, but I'm a little bit worried. I guess this is slightly different than the god being in their divine form, just completely melting people away, but it does worry me a little bit. Maybe he'll be knocked out, but hopefully he's still alive. But that's the end of the chapter, and that's the end of this episode of the Newest Olympian. Oh my gosh, what an intense fight. So fun.
Like you said, I was like, this can't be the chapter this happens. I get to do this chapter. So yeah, what a way for Rick to end a chapter.
Really solid, really solid. Now, I have retitled this one, I Give a Giant an Earful, because it feels like he would be talking smack, which he did do, but then he also did get him with a giant lightning blast in the ear. TBD, I guess, if that was just Jason or if Zeus got involved. But what did you retitle Chapter 50?
I had I think it kind of goes with the musical references for the previous ones. I had Blinded by the Light or I'm Blinded by the Light.
Yeah, no, that's
or
good. That's
even
good.
I See the Light, something like that. So
no,
I thought
like
that would be fun.
That's fun. That's fun. Well, this whole episode was fun. Morgan, thank you so much for joining. This was a delight. If people want to catch you doing stuff, where can they catch you doing stuff?
Yeah, I'm Imaginmatrix on pretty much every website that you can make an account on. It's Imagine without an E, and then Matrix, like the movie. I do cosplay. I do some writing stuff. I post a lot about Dungeons and Dragons and other TTRPGs. There's a couple of podcastings in the works that are Percy Jackson related. So if you're interested in that, you can follow me. And then I also work on Percy Jackson designs as a writer a lot. So if anyone's interested, there is a Percy Jackson planner that I worked on that's coming out towards the end of the year for pre-orders. So it's just PGO planner. So if anyone wants one of those, you can look it up.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, everyone check that out. Morgan, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thank you for listening. And until we find out next time if our good buddy Jason is okay or if he's been fried to a crisp, until we figure out what's going on there, I'll see you later. Hello. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you can't get enough of the podcast, you can get involved in a couple of different ways. First, you can support us on Patreon, where you get bonus content. You can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You can also find us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can go to our website, thenewestolympian.com, to learn more about the show. You can check out live shows that we've got coming near you at thenewestolympian.com/live. You can check out our merch page at thenewestolympian.com/merch. That's also where the TNO coffee lives. And for community stuff, we have a subreddit where you can chat with folks, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And we also have the Discord, which is accessible to all folks on Patreon. Speaking of the Patreon, I want to give a shout out to our folks producing at the highest tier, our producer level patrons. Shout out to Kelsey Gillespie, the Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Veronica Vartova, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Holly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Ashton Gabrielson, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Riley Kiddes, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkopf, Julia Kendall, Rike, John Drillsma, Rayla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, King Bastion, One Damn Distraction coming up, Ginger Spursboy, A Cup of Solace, Meg Roy, Bradimus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Finley McLeod, Sarah Elise Arnson, Bella, Hayden Neal, Percy Jackson, Han Haley Hingleheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Jessica Phillips, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kitka Crumbs, and Christine Parkin. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, word of mouth helps the show so much. Whether you post about the show on social media or you reach out to someone directly, someone who you know is a big Percy Jackson fan, or someone you've been trying to convince to get into the Percy Jackson books, saying, hey, there's this podcast that's called The Newest Olympian. It's really good. You should check it out. Also, you could leave the show a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. Whatever you do to spread the word of the show really does help. I'm appreciative to anyone who has done it in the past, and I'm appreciative to anyone who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode where we'll be joined by Dr. Stephen Parra to break down chapters 51 and 52 of The Lost Hero. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So here in the Shubio, I'm currently holding a tiny little rubber duck that I was gifted at the Toronto live show that we did recently. And it makes a very high-pitched and very loud squeaking noise, given how tiny this thing is. Like, this thing is smaller than my thumb, but it makes a powerful noise, and we will see how much of that is picked up on my microphone and not deleted by my sound cleanup software, and that will be our ASMR Mike segment for this episode. Small but mighty. Thank you so much for listening.